Alright guys, welcome back. It's the Red Shadow here, and this is going to be a gaming vlog. I don't know how often I've done just straight up gaming vlogs, or if I've even ever referred to them as that. This may just be another in a series of videos of me talking on this channel about my thoughts on video games, the video game industry, culture in video games, journalism, etc., etc., etc. I have a few different things I want to talk about in this one. And also, if I've talked about any of these things in the past on this channel, and anybody watching this video now has watched any of my other bullshit, and you remember me talking about this, I'm sorry for repeating myself. I would say that the chances are pretty good that if I've talked about this before, it's been a while, because of how often and sudden I will disappear and be gone for months or a few times even years. Okay, so anyway, let's talk first of all with some negative stuff. What I consider to be more negative stuff that I'm a bit more passionate about in terms of being pissed. Two companies offended me. Haha, there's that word, but it's not really that kind of offense. It's just, as a gamer who likes to own my physical games and likes to put them on shelves and likes to pop a disc into a console and play it, when there are things out there that I really, really want to get, I think the only reason why I shouldn't get them is because I don't have the money at the time. As I mentioned in my pickups video, maybe I prioritize something over something else, but if it's available and it's out there, then it's something I'm going to want to get. And two companies within the last couple of months have kind of spat in the face of me and other gamers like me over physical versions of games that I really, really wanted. Now I'm going to start first with Nintendo, because it's kind of a brief and a more fluid, in-the-moment situation with them. In February, roughly just like a little under a month ago, Nintendo had a Nintendo Direct that was actually a really good presentation in terms of games that they showed, even for a guy like me who doesn't have a Switch at this moment right now. I still have a small library of Switch games for when I do get a Switch again. And during this Nintendo Direct, some of the highlights included, if you've got Nintendo Switch Online and you have the expansion pack, you now have access to some Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games. And I thought that was pretty cool. And as I watched some YouTube channels that I like to watch react to that Nintendo Direct, when it got to that point in the show, they were like, "This is freaking awesome! Look at these games! Look at the games that are coming out soon!" And then the presentation rolled slyly, quietly, stealthily into a remaster of Metroid Prime. I love Super Metroid. I love what I got to play of Metroid Fusion and Zero Mission during that brief period of time in the mid-2000s when I had a Game Boy Advance. I have struggled, though, with Metroid Prime series in terms of the change to 3D games. And I think it was just because of what I consider to be the piss-poor control schemes of the time, but especially for Nintendo and especially for Metroid. They didn't adapt excuse me, they didn't quite adapt the FPS control scheme that some of the games in that time frame were starting to adapt to. And this remaster of Metroid Prime showed that they were going to make it more in parity, in my opinion anyway, with newer, more modern first-person shooter controls. That, to me, felt like taking the wall down, so to speak, that was blocking me from being able to enjoy the Prime series and really get into it. As somebody who, like I said, absolutely loves Super Metroid, it's in my top 10 games of all time, to cross over from the 2D style to the 3D style of Metroid Prime was something that I wanted to happen. I wanted to be able to play these games and enjoy them as much as I love other first-person shooter games, and especially as much as I love Metroid stuff. So they said, digital drops today, physical drops on February 22nd. Now, mind you, once again, I still don't have a Switch, but I was like, I'm getting Metroid Prime Remastered. I wanted to pre-order it, and I kept going online and kept checking Best Buy, Walmart, Target. Nothing that I checked had pre-orders available. It would either be no listing whatsoever, or a listing that said not available or coming soon, or whatever it would say. I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Kept getting all the way up to almost right on the date, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to just go to the store and see if I can find it on the shelf. I'm going to look up and see if it's just available in stores. If it had gotten to that point, I might have actually called a store and said, hey, do you have this game? Instead, because I kept getting rebuffed on the online options, I just ended up spending the money on Wanted Dead that I wanted to get instead of on Metroid Prime. And I was like, you know what? I'll just wait. It's going to be around for a while, right? Right? This is going to be available. Nintendo, you're going to have this on store shelves for a while, right? You didn't say during the Direct, this is going to be available until March something, like they did with the 3D Mario All-Stars game, where they just said, hey, these are going to be not necessarily limited quantities, but it's going to be available for a limited time. No, they didn't do anything like that. So I was counting on Nintendo having this stuff available, but I was watching. I was trying to keep my eyes on it, because I went on. I'm going to go on with my life now. Nintendo, I'm not going to sit here and just wait for you to put this up and make it available for me. I'm going to move on with my life, and I'll come back later. And it's now been out for, I guess we're getting close to 2 weeks, and I still don't know for sure that it's available online at any places. Now, granted, I haven't looked because I don't want to look and then just be like, I've got to buy this now then. But I still see people in the groups talking about how they haven't been able to get it yet. They're still waiting on their pre-orders from like Amazon's. There have been some people who've showed it off. It does exist. It's out there. But I'm really, really upset with Nintendo for apparently just being like, nobody cares about this, right? We're not even going to make this a big deal in our Direct. It's just going to lead from one thing into this and then on to the next. Nobody came out and announced it. When the last time that they really addressed Metroid Prime 4 was when they were revealing Metroid Dread. And they just said, hey, Metroid Prime 4, we're still working on it. But here's Metroid 5, which is called Metroid Dread, which was something we talked about like 2 decades ago, and people were super excited, super psyched. It got really good reviews and whatnot. It's definitely whenever I get a Switch, it may be the game I buy with the Switch, just so that I have that. I want Metroid Prime Remastered right now when I don't even have a Switch, because this is this game that I've been wanting to try to play and get into, and I'm hoping that this remastered one is the one that welcomes me in with its approachability. Here you go. The controls are going to be better. It looks really, really nice. Everybody is gushing over this that I watch on YouTube and whatnot. And I just want to have it. And Nintendo just seems to be, nobody cares about Metroid, right? It sucks too, because they can use that as an excuse to not do 2 and 3 in this new remastered style, because they can say, well, it only sold 300,000 copies. Well, that's because you only made 300,000 copies and you didn't put out any more. I hope that's not the case. I hope that it's more readily available. I hope that in a month or 2 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years, whenever I'm able to get a Switch, I hope that I'll be able to play Metro Prime Remastered on that, and hopefully hear good news in terms of maybe 2 or 3 being adapted into that style. But that situation is nowhere near the situation that Square Enix has. This is a fucking disaster. This pisses me off every time I have to get into it and even think about it. The Final Fantasy VII Pixel remasters. The Final Fantasies 1 through 6. This was a thing that I think was originally done for like PC and mobile. Making those 6 games available with revised or improved graphics to a point. Not replaced and made 3D and polygonal and all that, but just the pixels kind of sharpened up and adapted for modern TV screens and expensive to a degree of them being like, I don't know, I want to say like between $15 and $20 each for all 6 of these different games. But you know what? Who cares? This is Square history. As somebody whose favorite game is Final Fantasy VII and who's played a little bit of 6 and maybe sampled 5, I haven't really played those original games. Now, granted, I own them all except for 3. The actual 3, not the Super Nintendo 3, which was actually Final Fantasy VI. I own all of the first 6 except for 3 on PS1. But I want to play them in that newer, modernized look. I want to play them on a console that I play all my stuff on, the PS4. We all knew eventually that they were going to be digitally available on other consoles, or on consoles in general. And then it was finally announced, yes, they're coming. I think it was last year they were going to start dropping in by a game or 2 games a piece, and staggered over a time period. And then, sometime in December, in the middle of the night, I remember, because I was sitting here one night, I had been working on overnights, and I was playing Death Stranding, and I was just looking at my phone, and somebody was posting about it. They're up for pre-order on Square Enix's store. Final Fantasy VII Pixel Remasters for PS4 and Switch. I believe it was just those 2. If there were other ones, then maybe PS5, maybe Xbox Series XS, whatever. But definitely PS4 and Switch. And I was like, ooh, that's what I'm talking about. So I jumped over there to look at the thing. Basically, if this had been like a $60 game with standard shipping, I would have been on it. These were NTSC versions for Switch and PS4. They were $75, and the shipping was like $20 to $25. Weird, because, like I said, these were NTSC North American releases, but they were only going to be coming from the Square Enix store, and apparently that means that they had to be shipped overseas from Japan or something like that. So the shipping was super high. I remember it was something like $105 to $108 for the PS4 version and the shipping that they were charging. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not doing that right now for that price. That's okay, I'll throw some money aside until it's there and I'm comfortable with being like, okay, I can spend this for this one thing. They put it up for pre-order with like a April or May expected release date. They didn't have a release date pinned down. But like I said, this was December, early January. I thought, well, this is something I can just wait and I'll get it. Oh wait, wait a second. Less than a handful of hours later, it's sold out. The pre-order is exhausted. What? In the middle of the night, too, like I said, mind you, this happens in the middle of the night because it's being done on Japanese time where it's not in the middle of the night. But these are North American versions of the game that they're putting out for pre-order, and they're doing it in the middle of the night when all the people who are interested in it are fast asleep or normally would be fast asleep. It was just luck and happenstance that I happened to get on my phone at the time that somebody was like, hey, this is up and live. And I went over there to it, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to wait because of how expensive it is. I go back to playing Death Stranding. A little while later, I get online, and people are saying that it's already gone. I go back to the store, and sure enough, I can't remember what it said in there, sold out or whatever it was. And then there was a place to click and be like, sign up for our waiting list. Put your email in, and we'll alert you whenever more games come up. Okay, so I did that, and then I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And like I said, this must have been sometime in late-ish December, and January comes and goes, and February comes and goes, and no other listings for these ever come up, and nothing ever comes in for the waiting list. And I was already within, the first 24 hours very pissed off about the way that this thing had went down. But I thought, well, maybe being on that waiting list will pay off. Well, we haven't gotten to the release of the game yet, so maybe it still will. But a new thing happened. This is like last week or two. PlayAsia emails out to people and puts it up on their Facebook and their Twitter and whatever else. We are handling the Asian version, physical versions of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters for PS4 and Switch. Pre-order now. And I was like, you know what? I don't really have that kind of money to pony up right at this moment, but I'm not going to miss out on this again. I pre-ordered immediately. The price was still $75 US. The shipping, though, was only like $8 or $9 instead of the $25 that Square Enix was trying to pull. I was like, you know what? Here we go. Pre-ordered, happy. The front cover of that version will not have the NTSC thing on it, but it also didn't have anything. At least the artwork that they were showing showed just no rating whatsoever. And everything's region-free. Most of the stuff that comes out that's like Japanese or Asian, Chinese or whatever, they usually have English, just like you would get in an NTSC version. I will more than jump on that for that price, for what that collection is. 6 classic Final Fantasy games, of which I've played, like I said, only 1, maybe 2 in any amount. Never beat any of them. Give it to me, give it to me. And I'll wait several months. Also, that's another thing I should point out. PlayAsia was not charging you for it then. They were only going to charge you for it approximately about a week before it was going to ship out to you. So even though I was like, I don't really have this money right now, by the time we would get there, I'd have that money. And I felt so much more secure about making this financial decision. And then a couple of days later, got an email. And on my phone, when I get an email, a little thing comes up at the top, and it's there for like 2 seconds, and then it goes away. But I clearly noticed it on my phone when the email came in. PlayAsia, a word about Final Fantasy Pix, and then it cuts off. And I'm like, okay, let's take a look at what this is. Hesitantly, somewhat reluctantly, I click on my email app, and I click on that email, and PlayAsia says that, whoops, we made an error. And I'm not mad at PlayAsia on this one. This is all squarely on Square Enix. PlayAsia email says, whoops, there was an error in communication between us and Square Enix. There will not be a physical version of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters for PS4. The wording, whatever, I took it to mean there will not be a PS4 physical release in the Asian region, only a Switch one. I did not take this to mean Square Enix is saying, oh, no, PlayAsia, take that off of there, we're not doing that version, and oh, we're not also doing the version that we put up for pre-order like 2 months earlier for PS4 in North America. If they do that, there's going to be a lot of people very, very pissed off. I'm still on the waiting list on the Square Enix store page for news about that. And it's still a listing on their page, at least as of the last time I looked at it last week or whenever. This is what infuriates me. Like, I get upset about the Switch always getting all these old JRPGs. They got the Grandia HD collection, Grandia 1 and 2. Came to Switch, not PS4. Physical version. I don't know about the digital versions of these. I've allowed myself to purchase some digital versions of games recently, like the Chrono Cross Radical Dreamers edition, because it was not apparently going to come to a physical version on the PS4. I got that one, but I'm not looking at or thinking about those things. I want the physical version. And when these RPG companies say, sure, these 50 to 80 to 100 plus hour JRPGs would be perfect for a handheld system, but who wants to sit here on their couch and watch it in the comfort of their own home, play their games for all those hours? Oh, I just think it's so... makes me very, very upset. Anyway, this is so bizarre that it was supposed to come to both. And then they apparently only allotted a small amount for that initial pre-order. Then these Asian versions pop up on Play Asia, and then they're like, no, we're not going to do an Asian version for the PS4. We're only going to do an Asian version or a physical version on the PS4 in North America, where we normally don't get it. We normally have to import from Asia, from Germany, from Europe, the PAL versions, whatever. It's usually us over here in NTSC land that are struggling to get a physical version of it. And then they pull the wool out from underneath us. That was just really, like, I'm pissed. I'm very, very upset with you, Square Enix. This is crap. Maybe you'll make good by actually putting out more versions, making more physical NTSC versions of this available after it comes out. But I just don't think you would wait all this time after hearing all the people. I know the discourse online in my groups and whatnot was people were very, very upset. It's not the kind of thing that's getting splashed on YouTube like a lot of the other gaming industry stuff is. But I think that it should be. I wish that this was getting more noise in the gaming sphere, like some of the other things that does get a lot of discourse. Because this is just weird, just weirdly done. And I know maybe the reason why it wouldn't is because so many more people, the majority of people are doing their games digitally. So if somebody wants this pixel remaster thing, they're just going to download it. But I wanted that disc, man. I wanted that disc that went into my console. I wanted that disc that would go on the shelf. I wanted that disc that would at least last for, I don't know, hopefully 20 years or so before disc rot or anything like that would come take it. Because it's not a download thing. It's not a key that downloads the game from the internet. I've heard that here lately, and that really, really upsets me. So many people saying that. I had my PS4 without internet for like 3 years. Played every fucking game that I wanted to play on it without ever having to connect to the internet to download anything. Yes, it installs off the disc, but the disc is not just the key. There may be games and examples of that out there that are that situation. But stuff like this stuff that I show, stuff that I play over there from off of my shelves are not in that kind of boat. That's why I want that disc. If it gets to that point one of these days, I've said it before, that's when I'll turn around and walk away from being into the current gens of video game consoles. But as long as these discs can pop in and install the game without internet connection, disc is the way that I want to go. That's why this is important to me. This particular aspect is an important thing to me. So anyway, that is an ongoing situation, but I really feel like I'm just not going to get a physical version of this. Square Enix, though, if you want to make a fucking dumbass old guy on the internet happy, make more available. I'll pay the $75. I'll pay the stupid shipping if I have to. Let me have an NTSC version, a PAL version, an Asian version, as long as there's a version where I can sit down and play those first 6 Final Fantasy games on my goddamn PS4 console, I'll be happy. But if not, if all these strange things, canceling a version or saying it was never going to be, but doing an NTSC version, but limited amounts in the middle of the freaking night for $75 and like $20 worth of shipping. That kind of shit is... That's why the Square Enix of today, the company, the publisher or whatever, is one of the worst out there in my opinions. Alright. I'm fighting against a battery up here in this camera that may try to die on me here in a little bit. So, before I can finish all this stuff, I see that it's about to go. I'll cut this video off, put a new battery in, go back in, stitch the two videos together, and all you'll know, the only reason why you'll even know is because I'm talking about this. But these two other things that I wanted to talk about, I have this written down here, and hopefully I can explain this comment, this concept of hype in the video game industry as currency. This has to do with state of plays, E3 showcases, Nintendo Directs, Xbox developer presentations, Inside Xbox, EA, whatever, Ubisoft's whatever, Bethesda's whatever. And the way that over, especially this past generation, the last one, the PS4, Xbox One generation, the way that especially a company like Sony turned these presentations into Omega hype fests with, this video game trailers and announcements and oh my god, and turned it into, like I said, what I consider to be currency. Where now as people walk into these things and they expect, give me that currency, give me that hype, give me something really, really good. And then a show doesn't have Final Fantasy VII Remake and Shenmue 3 is a Kickstarter and God of War and a new kind of style. Concert presentation, the orchestra playing along to the previews. Oh, look, it's Knights of the Old Republic remake that's already kind of a squandered mess. Games being announced years and years and years and years before they should be, and yada, 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 yada. This hype as currency pisses me off because I watch some of the same channels I talked about earlier doing reactions to things, and I go into every reaction being like, this could be really, really cool. It could have a bunch of stuff that I don't care about, but I'm going to enjoy it. And all of those games, regardless of what the game is, who the audience they speak to is, whether they're AAA with a big budget or they're indie or there's something in between, they all deserve their chance to shine on the screen like this. They all deserve it. It's not, should have been a blog post, should have been an email, should have been on this little company's small YouTube channel. No, put it on Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft's channels. Put it on IGN and GameSpot. Put it all over the damn place in these different things. Allow these game developers to have a chance for their game to be shown. Stop shitting on these. I'm talking to some of these channels. I'm going to name drop some of them here right now. The most egregious one for me has been Kinda Funny. Some of the guys on the Kinda Funny reactions will really slaughter something just because it's not a game for them. Why is this on the show? It's like everybody, every game developer deserves a chance to have their stuff spotlighted. When you say, that shouldn't have been on this show, why did they spend 5 minutes looking at this thing? You're now shitting on somebody whose blood, sweat, and tears for the last year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or whatever, went into putting that game together. It may only speak to a small audience, but that small audience may very well be watching that presentation. And the reason why I talked about this is like hype as a currency is because some of these game companies created this problem. I think it's a wonderful problem to have, to sit down and watch a show and not know if there's going to be 10, 15 games that are going to melt your face off, or if it's just going to be a bunch of stuff that's like, yeah, that's not for me. Because of those Sony shows, I want to say especially 2015, that was the one where the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Last Guardian was reintroduced, Shenmue 3 Kickstarter. Within the next couple of years, we had Horizon Zero Dawn being announced, God of War Ragnarok being shown, Spider-Man, Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 7, just all kinds of stuff that was shown off, and people were just like, you see the reaction of the people in the crowd, and they're just all like melting into their seats, or they're standing up, they're hooting and hollering, they're like, oh, Sony kind of created that problem, but all of the Microsoft had the Cyberpunk moment with Keanu Reeves when he came out on stage, and that's awesome. And even though Nintendo doesn't do like the stage presentations anymore, but they still have their Nintendo Directs that would be adjacent to that time frame, and they would have really big announcements. That created an environment where people are like I said, currency, hype as currency. They're waiting to just, they want, it's like trailer is like showering them with money, and they just take that money, the hype, and they bathe in it, and then they're like ready to like put that money back out in the way they react, the way that they'll talk about something. The concept sounded a little bit different in my head when I first thought of this, but like it's that give and take. But people need to temper their expectations, and that should go without saying. But it makes me upset when I watch a thing and I see a game, and I can clearly even look at the game and say, that's not for me. But when some person on one of these YouTube channels, and I love all these YouTube channels and all these people and their opinions, but it's just one of those times where, like, if I was sitting in a room with a friend of mine, and they were like, oh, that's stupid, that's boring, I don't like that game, that's nonsense, who wants that? I would be like, hey dude, somebody made that game. And just like the games that you like, who are made by people who you should be appreciative for that they did that work, you should not shit on somebody else because they made a game that you don't have any interest in. That's their job. That'd be like somebody walking by you while you're doing your job and saying, you suck, your job is worthless, and the work that you put into it doesn't matter. That's the thing that got stuck in my craw about this one. And like I said, Sony and these other companies kind of created this big hype market, and now people are being disappointed because not every show is just like amazing. Oh my god, don't go into the live chat comment sections for any of these presentations when they're on. You just see people say yawn, next, lame, stupid about games that, like I said, people put time and money into. But these companies kind of created this hype. They created this currency, this flow of it's got to be this way, or it's just okay. So I don't have any idea where that cut off, but I was literally just saying something about, I think I have enough time to finish off this last thing I wanted to talk about, and then the camera shut off. So anyway, through the horrible editing that I do, it'll be spliced together, and we'll continue on with this last point I want to make in this gaming related video blog, aka vlog. So the last one I was talking about, hype as currency, the give and take between developers, publishers, console makers, presentations, and then the gamers, the fans, the buyers, the consumers, and this back and forth and this give and take about what they have given us and what we expect and how we react back to it, whether we think it's good or bad. I think gamers should be better. I think they should react better. I think the companies should maybe not overdo it. So anyway, for some reason when I was thinking about all that, I thought back to a thing I've been thinking about since the days of Tomb Raider 2 on the PlayStation 1. I remember reading in a video game magazine, I don't recall which magazine it was, but I remember either in a preview or a review for Tomb Raider 2, the person writing the review said something that even at the time I thought to myself, what? I don't agree, and I don't really understand why this thought process is so pervasive and has been for so long. So bear with me on this. Excuse me. Haven't talked this much in a row in several days. They said that Tomb Raider 2 was a good game, that it made some slight improvements to the gameplay from the first game. The graphics were a little bit better, and they said something to the degree of like Laura has like one like new additional gameplay mechanic or something like that. And they pointed out, though, that it was only one thing. And obviously this is paraphrasing, and I'm going back on memory of something from like 25 years ago. I don't have the magazine in front of me. I don't know if I own that magazine anymore. I don't remember which magazine it was. I just remembered that they made this point about how Tomb Raider 2 essentially didn't innovate enough from the formula of the first game. You know, Tomb Raider, not a unpopular game, not a slouch in the sales department or anything. Later Tomb Raiders may have disappointed. Square Enix, that company again that I was just griping about earlier in the previous part of this video. But in the 90s, Tomb Raider was like a breakout hit. Everybody loved Tomb Raider. They loved this 3D action adventure game where you play as Lara Croft, this badass archaeologist, adventurer, explorer, Tomb Raider. Like, that was a big game, and I loved it. I played it at the time. I loved it. Still have a copy of it. Still have my original strategy guide. Pretty sure the strategy guide I own for the original Tomb Raider was the first strategy guide I ever bought, and I still own that particular copy. That particular actual physical strategy guide. It was big shit. Tomb Raider and Lara Croft was like, for a time there, she was one of those video game characters was just as recognizable as Mario, just as recognizable in the world as Mickey Mouse, just about. Maybe not quite to that level, but in the video game sphere, she was everywhere. She was on, magazine covers and articles in those, and reviews and all that kind of stuff. Like, Tomb Raider was a big thing, and there's a reason for that. I guess what I'm trying to say is, good game. Very well done, very well made game. Why somebody would complain that the sequel would make improvements, but not like reimagine or like completely totally innovate on the idea that they had in the first game, that just blew my mind that somebody would suggest that. And so my point here is, because it looks like the damn camera battery on this one's already getting ready to be shot. My point is that sometimes, there are games out there like, say, an Elden Ring, or the change that God of War made in the 2018 version over the PS2 games. There are times when games really can innovate on their theme, on their genre, on their basic premise, their gameplay mechanics, whatever. But sometimes they don't have to. I don't understand why Tomb Raider 2 had to go so much more beyond what they thought it did. I hear this all the time. Same thing with Tomb Raider 3. Why didn't it change more of this and that? Why doesn't it do this and that? I'm not saying that games shouldn't innovate and games shouldn't change and they shouldn't shoot for the fucking moon. But not all of them. They don't all have to be that way. Sometimes when a game is good, when that formula is mastered, sequels are going to they're going to come, they're going to happen. Just let them be more of the same, with the improvements, the graphical improvements, brand new worlds, a few new extra moves or things in the arsenal of whatever the game characters or the gameplay mechanics are. But they don't have to go from like what Demon Souls was to what Elden Ring became. They don't have to go from the original Legend of Zelda to Breath of the Wild. Also realize that those happened over the course of years and sometimes decades. Tomb Raider to Tomb Raider 2 was like a year or two, I think. That was just a thing that kind of, you know, got under my skin when I remembered that, when I was thinking about the hype thing. It was just sort of a, sometimes you can just be satisfied with something being really, really good instead of something being really, really different, but oh man, it's really, really amazing. Not every game, because I fear that game companies are going to stretch themselves so thin and so far and wide with trying to make every damn game that they make blow the last thing out of the water, that eventually there's nothing left. They can't do anything more than what they do. If you understand what it is I'm saying. The concept in my head seems very, very sound. Trying to explain it here in front of the camera, I don't feel like I'm quite getting there. But it's like, if you make something and it's really, really good, then the next thing can be here. It doesn't have to be here. It doesn't have to be way over there. Because eventually when you're making stuff way over there, the next thing is on the other side of the fucking planet. What can you do with that? Let's keep games here. Let's try not to have a bunch of them that are way down here. Let's shoot for up here. But if you land here and it's good and you make a sequel and it's here, that's fine. I don't know. Maybe it's a weird bias against something like Elden Ring last year. Everybody was just Elden Ring, Elden Ring, Elden Ring. Cool. I bet it's great. One of these days I'll buy it because of my From Software connection of loving Kingsfield 2 so much. Maybe one of these days I'll buy it, but I don't know that I'll even ever play it. I might almost not play it just because of how much I hate everybody just being like, Elden Ring just did so much innovation. Well, where does the next thing go? I wish From Software the best, but what happens? Because a lot of people were like, oh, God of War Ragnarok is probably going to be really, really damn good. But what if it's just more God of War? Oh my God! What if it's just more God of War? I don't even like God of War. I couldn't finish the original God of War because I didn't care for the original God of Wars. But what happens if Elden Ring 2 comes out and it's just more Elden Ring? Is everybody going to be like, oh, it's just more Elden Ring, I just love it? Or are they going to be upset that it's not the next fucking amazing thing? You know what I'm saying? Like, put yourself in that last year's mindset that Elden Ring was just game of the year. It was the most amazing thing. Sure, it didn't have this story or whatever, but the gameplay and the open world and the secrets and all this and that. The gift that just keeps on giving. The way that people gushed about Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is a game I will at least give a shot to. But now people are like, well, what if Tears of the Kingdom is just more Breath of the Wild? Cool, right? Don't you want that? Isn't there room for that? Am I just old man yelling at the clouds? I don't know, but I'm worried that this camera's going to shut off. I made my point that I wanted to make, and I'm going to go. So, thanks for watching. See you next time.